Hello, and welcome to the Pride Lands of Lioness Ink and Insight, a den for honest conversations about creativity, identity, the beautifully chaotic experience of being human, and the occasional feral moment, because sometimes that's the most truthful part. I'm your host, Angelia N. Bailey, author, graphic designer, mom, emotional gremlin with a purpose, and someone who has a lot of thoughts about, well, everything. Thanks for stepping into the den with me. Grab a drink, get comfortable, and welcome to the Pride.
Fuck being a princess, I'd rather be a witch. Trade that throne for a flame and a twitch. You got roots, I got roots. You wear flats, I wear boots. Fuck being a princess.
Hello, and welcome back to the Lioness Ink and Insight Pride Lands for episode 2 of The Agent Unveiled. For those of you who need a little recap, The Agent Unveiled is a 4-part miniseries project where we show the writing community and the publishing industry behind the veil of the agent role to bring humanity into it. So in episode 2 of this miniseries, we are going to focus on the invisible parts of the agent's work, the things that shape the job, but often happen entirely behind the scenes. These are going to be things that authors may not understand simply because they never get to see them. There's going to be a lot of exclusive content in this episode that can't typically be found anywhere else. But before we get started, I do want to take a second to thank everyone for being a part of this. It is tremendously important, and I am beyond grateful to everyone that includes you listeners equally as much as authors, the writing community, and the agents. Now, without further ado, let's go ahead and welcome our first guest.
They said smile, they said sit still. Where you lay, swallow your will. Cross your legs, close your mouth. Be the pretty thing they talk about.
AJ Van Belle is back to take that deep dive into the invisible work others don't often see or know about. Thank you again for joining me, AJ. I hope all has been well your way.
All has been well, thank you. I hope it has for you too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been really cold and snowy here, but we're getting through it.
Yeah.
All right. So, one of the first questions that we wanted to go over was when an agent says they're busy, what does that usually mean in practice?
I think that is such an interesting question because there's so many different facets to the job. And I find that a lot of my time is involved in communicating with clients, in reading manuscripts, responding to queries if I'm open, if I have them in my inbox, uh, researching what my plans for submissions for a particular book are going to be, doing all of the email exchanges around that. So that's kind of the big picture overview of what all of that looks like. And every step of it takes longer than I tend to think it will. Uh, but that's okay. So it is very multifaceted. Reading manuscripts is a hugely time-consuming thing for agents in general, and I try to uh, minimize the way that that eats up so much time by using a text-to-speech app, I hope strategically. I do a lot of listening to manuscripts, submitted manuscripts, and client manuscripts while I'm doing other things. So I'm listening while I'm at the gym, while I'm cooking, while I'm cleaning, all kinds of activities where I can just be listening while I'm doing something else with my hands. And that allows it to fit into life in a way that doesn't mean that all of my work days are spent doing that, because I'm also doing all those other aspects of agenting and also writing. And that actually brings me to a thought about when agents say they're busy, is that most agents are like certainly not all, but my guess is more than half of all agents that you would see if you go into Query Tracker have a day job of some form or another. And so a lot of people are working the 9 to 5 and then agenting evenings, weekends, and their lunch breaks, or they have at least a part-time job other than agenting. So most of us are doing something else as well and balancing that. So I think that's also what a lot of people mean by they're so busy as an agent, but there's always a lot of deadlines coming up, a lot of people having questions. So there's always something new that you don't anticipate on any given day coming into your inbox and needing attention right then. And that's actually part of what I like about it.
The variety and being able to not know every single thing that's going to happen the next day.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So, what's a misconception, a common misconception that you've seen about agenting that comes from not seeing the full picture rather than that intent?
The biggest thing I think that is a really common misconception is that authors feel like if they're getting rejections from agents in general or from a given agent, it means that that agent thought there was something wrong with their manuscript, disliked it. They think of it as, but what was I lacking? What wasn't good enough? And the fact is that the volume of manuscripts coming to agents is so high that we all have to turn away a lot of really good material. And you can hear it said over and over by agents saying, I have to absolutely fall in love with something to take it on. And I think it's really hard to absorb the truth of that. I don't think that I fully did until becoming an agent myself. And even now, as I'm early in my agenting career, I am still learning. I have to be completely in love, feel like, oh, I really couldn't put this book down, not just kind of loved it, but where I'm just so passionate about the book because there are so many good things that come in my inbox. There's so much talent. And saying no to something doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it by any means. And the majority of the time, if I'm saying no to something, I am thinking, but the right agent is out there, the person who will fall in love with this. So it's very hard. Speaking as a writer, I know how hard it is to have the experience of not yet having found the industry professional who's fallen in love with your work. Doesn't mean that you're not going to, doesn't mean that you're lacking anything. It's really a matter of finding the right fit, and that can take a while. But if you as a writer are doing the work of improving your craft all the time, getting feedback, implementing the feedback that resonates and leaving aside the feedback that doesn't, and you can feel that you are expressing the story that you want to express in the way that you want to, then the right match is going to be out there.
Exactly, that's very true. What is a decision you make regularly that looks simple from the outside, but's actually very complex?
I think that there are several decisions in on the agenting front that are more complex than they look from the outside. And one of them that comes to mind is how many clients will I be working with in the long run? How many clients is it right for me to have in my stable of authors at a given time? Because when I make a commitment to an author, my intention is that I'm making that commitment for the long term. And that means that each author is going to be writing more books at their own pace. And for some people, that's a book every 2 or 3 years. And for some people, that's a book every 3 or 4 months. So there's a lot going to be coming in from each author. There's a lot going to be happening with each author. So that is a decision that I have heard is very different for every agent. Some people feel like they're saturated at under 10 clients. Some have 40 or more. I'm going to fall somewhere in between, I think, because it's very important to me to be able to give each client the attention that their work deserves and that it needs. That's a complex balance because it also is true that I want to connect with as many authors who feel like the right fit for me as possible. So that's one that I'm going to have to navigate going forward that is definitely going to be more complex than it might look at a glance.
I think you said that great. You said that beautifully.
Well, thank you so much.
What is something you do for your authors that doesn't show up anywhere publicly but matters a lot?
Simply communicating with them on a regular basis and responding relatively quickly when somebody has a question or just would like reassurance, I think is super important. And different agents have different styles with that. Some people are very communicative, some people are more like we'll just chat when you have an updated manuscript and that's it, and they're not buddies behind the scenes. And for me, it's very important to be available to talk with my clients as they want to, as it feels right to connect, so that I'm connecting with them as human beings. And that I think is so important because this is an industry that commodifies pretty much all of us who are involved in it on things that are so creative and so personal, as well as just really important. Like creativity is like our life force, and as human beings, we thrive on it. And yet, the people who are doing the creating are just product providers to the industry itself, not to individuals within the industry for the most part, but to the kind of overall machinery of publishing. And it's so important that each person knows that they're valued as a human being and as a creator, and not just for what product they can create to sell in the publishing industry. And I make sure that people know, or I hope I make sure they know, that I am there to support them in their creative journey, in becoming the writers that they are and that they dream of continuing to become. And that is actually, to me personally, that's more important than whatever money or acclaim we might earn together by working together. It's really about that dream of being the writer that they are working on being. And so to me, being available to communicate with them is a huge part of that.
Absolutely. Communication is so key in like so many different aspects of this industry. So that was absolutely perfect what you said. I think that's going to show people that 'cause I feel like there's a misconception that goes around the writing community that some agents tend to be in it for just the money. And I'm like, you guys, I want to poke a hole in that because that's not true. So that was
It's actually
perfect.
it's an industry where it's very hard to earn a living, let alone doing it just for the money. That harks back to what I mentioned, that most agents have another job or are otherwise, they have some other means of support because the math otherwise doesn't really add up for what you can do. And so I'm doing it while also writing full time, having 3 books currently under contract. Uh, that's kind of the alternative to also having the day job. So yeah, you're absolutely right. I think most people doing this are doing it because they truly love books, love the people who create them, and want to contribute to more of that storytelling that kind of keeps us going.
Yeah, absolutely. Storytelling can be healing for the reader and the writer. So I absolutely see
Definitely.
what you mean there. Yeah. So that's it for this episode. I wanted to thank you again. That gives such an important window into the reality of the job, which is one of the main things I really wanted to highlight in episode 2 that we're doing. Is there any final thought or closing note you would like to leave listeners with for this episode?
I just want to say thank you for asking such insightful questions that help bring us to a little bit better understanding and pull back the curtain a little bit for people who are not seeing behind the scenes on agenting. So thank you.
Absolutely. That's the reason for the title too, The Agent Unveiled. We're removing the veil. And then are you still open to answering questions in the comments for this episode as you are able to?
Yes, definitely.
All right. Well, I can't wait to chat more in the final episode of this series where we discuss the larger pressures and nuances of the industry. And I am so grateful that you'll be joining me for that episode as well.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
Well, bless your crown, baby, bless your pearls. I ain't built for those kind of words. Keep your castle, keep your king. I got fire in a goddamn swing.
Rachel Estep is back for episode 2 in the mini series where we show the writing community and publishing industry behind the veil of the agent role to bring humanity into it. Thank you again, Rachel, for being part of this.
Absolutely.
Well, episode 2 in this 4-part mini-series project focuses on the invisible parts of an agent's work, the things that shape the job, but often happen entirely behind the scenes. Things authors may not understand simply because they never get to see them, or anyone in the writing community. So one of the things that I wanted to first get into is what part of agenting happens entirely behind the scenes, but shapes outcomes in big ways.
Networking. Oh God, networking. Relationships and reputation are so important in this business.
Yeah.
And I have made some fantastic connections through just sitting down and having conversations with other agents, with other editors. That networking really just opens up so many connections and so many possibilities. I have several manuscripts that I've submitted to certain editors because in a conversation with certain agents they've said, "Oh, I've done a deal with this editor. They really like stuff like that. Go here." And those kinds of like ins, especially for a young agent, are really important. I did have one that like I mentioned it on a call. We were just chatting, me and the editor. This author was not even out on sub yet.
Oh, wow.
And I just mentioned it to the editor when we were talking, and she said, "Oh my gosh, can I see that?" And so I got with the author and was like, "Hey, look, I know that we're not technically out, but she wants to see it. I want to send it like now." And she ended up coming back to us and was like, "I love this." And so that's cool.
Yeah.
And that would never have happened if I hadn't been doing this 30-minute networking meeting. There was no intention behind that meeting other than to say, "Hi, I'm Rachel," and get to know that editor and, put my face in her head and put her wish list in my head. And so those just chats are so cool. Another one that's, very interesting to me is I had lunch with a group of agents at a conference, and I got to eat lunch with an agent who was very well established and much older than me and much more well-rounded than me as far as agenting goes. And I had a lot of questions, and they answered all of them and said, "Hey, if you ever have any questions, reach out." And I did actually about 2 weeks ago. I had questions that my boss wasn't quite sure how to answer. So I reached out to this agent and said, "Hey, I know you said I could reach out if I had questions. What do you think about this?" And he was so helpful and so wonderful and really pointed me in a great direction that could be really lucrative in the future. And I would not have had that had I not just sat down and eaten lunch with this gentleman.
Right. No, and I don't think anybody realizes like how much goes into the agenting role. That's why I really wanted that to be one of the questions I asked because I think them being able to see like it's not just sending stuff out as if we do in querying. There's so much more that goes into it.
Yeah, we
So
have a Yiddish word for it. I'm Jewish, and we have a Yiddish word for it. It's called schmoozing.
yeah,
And
I know that word.
yeah, yep. And so there is a lot of schmoozing that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot of networking, rubbing elbows, and all of that. So, what
Yeah.
is something that you do for your authors that doesn't show up anywhere publicly, but matters a lot to you?
Yeah, so I'm going to pivot from this because that, like, networking for them and talking about them is one thing, but
Yeah.
actually something I think that I've done for my authors that's bigger is more personal, and that is I really, really, really made it important that they know each other, and we have a Discord server that is active every day, so much so that sometimes we have to silence it, out of love, but I really made it important that they feel like they know each other and they have support from each other. It's a safe place to talk about the frustrations of the sub process and the editing process, to celebrate each other's wins, big or little. And I think that's so important because the mental health aspect that comes with the submission process can be very, very, very taxing. It's a long process and it's a lot of no's, just like querying. And it can be
Yeah.
very isolating. And I
Yep.
think having that place where the authors can talk to each other and kind of feel what each other are feeling is very validating. And it's really important to me as an agent to protect your career, but also to protect your mental health while I'm protecting your career.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've noticed even online, like how your clients, how a lot of them talk about agentships and they all seem very interconnected online, which I think just goes to show how much you foster basically like a family among your clients. And I think it's important for people to know that and see that so that they can see like that you're very invested with your clients.
Yeah, one of my clients teases me all of the time because I'm awake at like all hours. She says that it doesn't matter what time she texts me, I'm going to answer. And that, like, she has texted me at my time, like 3 o'clock in the morning, which is not 3 o'clock in the morning her time. And
No.
I do answer most of the time, and it just so happens my phone just wakes me up most of the time. Having a medical kid, I wake up very easily, but I never am really unreachable. And I think being accessible to my clients also makes them feel safer with me.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I can see why that would be too. And I think one of you mentioned previously that there's a lot that goes into it emotionally and mentally, into the whole publishing side of it and your side of it. So what is an emotional or mental load in your work that people might not realize exists that you haven't already touched on?
So it's for me, it's the rejections. And I
Okay.
actually did a Substack about this recently.
Yes.
Um, it's hard and it's isolating. And when you are reading a really, really, really good book, you want to talk about it, right? And that's not possible in a lot of contexts as an agent. Either I am reading it before to give an author, a chance and whether or not I'm going to offer on it. And then you can't say anything because you don't want them to know whether you're going to offer or not. Or I'm reading it after to give edits and you can talk to the author, but nobody else. Or, it's very much a shush, don't say anything kind of situation. And you're falling in love with a book. And that's the thing, is I don't sign clients that I don't fall in love with,
Yeah.
which means once we get to sub, every rejection is a rejection on a book that I have fallen deeply in love with.
Yeah.
And that can be really tough. If you think about it, you know how you feel about querying, it's tough.
Yeah.
I have 10 clients. I think I have 8 of them on sub right now. So it's constant, and it's a different one every day, and sometimes it's multiple a day, and it's very similar to getting rejections in the query trenches, but I'm attached to all of these in a very, very deep way. And I find myself getting very frustrated, sometimes even angry. Like, why don't you understand how good this book is? And that comes from also a place of I'm also a bookseller and I don't sign anybody without thinking about like, could I sell this book over the counter at my own bookshop? I
Yeah.
believe 100% that I could hand sell this in new and old pages. So, with all of that said, sometimes rejections can be really chill, and I'm like, okay, every no is a new step towards yes. And then other times it can be really frustrating. I will say that the first couple weeks of January, the first 2 weeks, things got real better the third week here, and going into next week. But the first couple weeks, we came back from the holidays and editors had a lot of time to read over the holidays. And so there was just kind of this influx of passes. And I definitely was feeling it. And the mental load that we can't share is that it's our job not to let the authors feel that way.
Yeah.
And so I definitely find myself in this kind of place where it's like I want to kick and scream, but also I have to convince my author that that it's not her. Her book doesn't suck. Her book is fantastic. So I need to get my attitude together so that I can go and control how she takes it.
Yeah, so it's kind of like almost a parenting or big sibling role that you take on as an agent.
It can be. I like to think of it like a big sibling
Yeah.
when it comes, and a lot of writers are very sensitive about their work, and so you have to find the ways to phrase it, and the ways to make them understand the reasonings, and a lot of the reasonings have nothing to do with craft, and that's really hard for people to understand sometimes. Once you're on sub, a lot of times you're getting passes because of market space, because of list space, because of money reasons. You can get shot down for so many reasons that have nothing to do with the quality of your work. But we're so in love with our work as creatives that every rejection can feel like a personal one.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for that because that gives such an important window into the reality of the job that a lot of us out here in the writing community don't see. And I've noticed a lot of assumptions are otherwise made. So I thank you so much for giving your unique perspective there. That is it for episode 2 on the invisible work in agenting. Is there any final thought or closing note you would like to leave listeners with for this episode?
I don't think so. Thank you for having me again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you said in episode 1 you're open to answering questions in the comments. Is the
Yeah,
same
for
for
sure.
this episode? Perfect.
Fuck being a princess, I'd rather be a witch. Trade that throne for a flame and a twitch. You got roots, I got roots. You wear flats.
Next up, we have Ciara Smith back again for episode 2. Thank you again, Ciara, for being part of this.
Thank you for having me back.
Absolutely. So, one of the first things that I wanted to go over with you is what part of agenting happens entirely behind the scenes, but shapes outcomes in big ways.
That would definitely be editor relationships. So there are times, even if I get a pass for one client, like I will let that client know and any reasons or whatever, but I immediately follow up with that editor to ask them like what else they're looking for. If I have something that I think is a good fit, I will soft pitch, I call it, but like gently reference another one of my clients' books. Be like, you didn't like this one, but I think you may like this one. And it's just like a constant back and forth in my inbox.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that because I don't think a lot of people understand that. It's not clean cut. You just send out this thing and editors go, "Oh yeah, I love it," or "I don't." No, it's much more complex.
Hmm.
So what's a decision that you make regularly that looks simple from the outside, but is actually very complex?
Which publishing house to send books to? Because I'll have authors talking about like, oh, they think their book will fit with these publishing houses' books, but then they also like this other one. But with the big five, especially, like there's so much overlap that public facing, I don't think everybody sees a lot, but even if you love the books of one imprint, they might have the same exact editors of another, and I can only submit to like certain ones. I can't overlap them and I can't double submit. And it's kind of like it's not even a no from one imprint is a no from all. It can overlap multiple imprints. So I'm constantly having to like, okay, just because you like both of these, I can only submit to one of them.
Mhm.
And just constantly making sure I'm picking the absolute best imprint of that little group.
I didn't even know that, honestly. That was really insightful. What's something that takes up a lot of time or energy in your job that really gets talked about too?
Taking care of authors. Like I love all of my authors and I will always give the time, but I don't think people understand like how much time it does take to reassure or to let people know about the process and the questions that they have, or when they come up with a book idea and they want to like brainstorm it or ask if that's where they should be going. Um, Even on my days off, my authors will like message me about something. And so I have to like temporarily put the agent brain on and be like, okay, let's answer your question real quick and then get you on your way because I don't want anyone like sitting with the anxiety. So
Yeah.
I make sure I respond.
Yeah, one of the things me and Rachel talked about was that agents often take on either depending on their preference, either a parental or big sibling role with their clients.
Yeah, exactly. And I am really open that I do a lot of healing work myself and try to be like very emotionally aware. So sometimes when I see that happening with my clients, like the anxiety is creeping into the question that they're asking, I'll be like, okay, let's take a step back and actually address why you're asking this question instead of the actual question itself. And then like I help them kind of deal with that and give them all of the reasons why they don't need to be worried.
Yeah, and for listeners that don't know, Ciara does tarot readings, and things like that. So, which is incredible. I love that. I've been meaning to get one from you.
Definitely should because they're crazy, scary, insightful. I'll even do some for myself and be like, okay, I hadn't thought of that at all. So thank you, tarot cards, for being honest and telling me that. Thanks.
And you love that. And just something random happens and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, sure.
Yep. Yep.
So, what's a misconception about agenting that comes from not seeing the full picture rather than bad intent?
I personally think the not selling part of like just because you send something on submission, like if you do everything right as an agent, it should sell. So if you're not having all of the sales, if all of your clients haven't sold every single one of your books, then obviously you're a bad agent. You're not doing anything wrong because unfortunately, that's really not how the industry works at all. Like
Right.
I could have the most perfect book and the most perfect pitch and contact what I thought was the most perfect editors. And it's all down to like such subjective things that I have no control over. And like how the market is moving because there's there's things like behind the scenes of how sales are happening with the publishing houses and how the sales are influences how many books an editor takes on, which influences how selective they have to be. And then if they had signed something or like offered to something, but it's doesn't have a contract yet, then it's not announced in Publishers Marketplace. But if you submit something that's too similar to that, like you have no way of knowing that they just offered to a book that is similar. So there's so many reasons why an agent might not be selling something, and majority of those reasons have nothing to do with their quality as an agent.
Yeah, or even the client's work too at that.
Yeah.
Is there any final thought or closing note you'd like to leave listeners with as we close out episode 2 now?
Um, yeah, just that I want authors to know that we could absolutely love your book and still have to say no. And I know it feels so personal so many times, but it's not. And a lot of it has to do with what we have to deal with as well. And like fielding the editor's responses and having to deal with different market trends, and that we're on your side. Like we're on author's side. And some of the vitriol, I think, lands on agents a lot when really it should be like on publishing as a system and more of like building agents up as champions rather than as gatekeepers.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. That was actually really insightful. And then I know you said in episode 1 that you're open to answering questions in the comment. Is the same still exists for this episode?
Yes.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much again, Ciara, for taking the time to answer these deeper questions. I can't wait to speak with you again in episode 3.
Being a princess, I'd rather be a witch. Spit that curse, make the heavens glitch. You want calm, I want stone. I crack bones just to be reborn.
Shelly Romero is back for episode 2 in this mini-series where we show the writing community and publishing industry behind the veil of the agent role to bring humanity into it. Thank you again, Shelly, for being part of this.
Yes, thank you for having me again. I'm ready to yap.
I'm ready to yap with you. We have some great conversations. Well, episode 2 in this 4-part mini-series project focuses on the invisible parts of an agent's work, the things that shape the job but often happen entirely behind the scenes. So these are things that authors may not understand, but simply because they've never got to see them. So what part of agenting, in your opinion, happens entirely behind the scenes but shapes outcomes for you or your clients in big ways?
I think a lot of it is the relationship building. As an agent, you're very much like managing a lot of different things at one time, whether it's because you have multiple clients going out on sub, or you're trying to read queries to get a new client signed. But a lot of the big part of my work, which is to sell these books that my clients have written, is that relationship. I've been in the industry, it sucks to say, almost a decade. This year will be 9 years.
Oh, wow.
So I know. I've seen a lot, let me tell you.
Oh, yeah.
So like I came into agenting with a lot of relationships already established that I built up from when I was an editor. And as as an agent now, it's a little bit different because I really am trying to be like, how do I match make an editor to my client's book? What is my sublist is going to look like? Who are the editors in the first round or two that are going to give this book the best possible chance to be published and acquired and made into reality? So that networking is so important. It's also a reason why I always tell, like, especially like younger people who are in college, to just reach out, because you never know if someone is going to say yes or no to talking to you. Whether it's like a quick 30-minute chat or anything. I've always told people this, like when you do informationals, just reach out. They might be busy, they might tell you that, but most of the time you'll find a time to talk, because also people like talking about themselves. I love talking about myself, okay? Like, I'm a Sagittarius. I can't help
I
it.
knew it.
I'm like a double Sag. I actually have four Sag placements, but
Oh my
alas,
gosh.
I digress. But it is about like going out and whether going out to lunch or coffee or just doing a quick phone call or video chat to be like, hey, editor, like, what do you want? Or, hey, you moved from this house to this other house and now you're acquiring something different. What are you looking for? What can I send you that is potentially going to be that one that makes you have the feelings in your stomach, like the butterflies, and is like, I need to buy this before someone else buys it.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is that networking. A lot of it is that reaching out. And also kind of with that, like researching, like going online and seeing, whether it's the manuscript wish list pages or if it's the tags on social, of maybe what are these editors or other industry people talking about? Like, what are they seeing? Like, if I have a gothic horror, who's the people who loved Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, right? So I can, tweak my submission letter and pack it to them and say, I heard you like this. So maybe you like this.
Oh yeah, no. And like even I think authors can relate to that too because we do kind of the similar thing as with agents when we're querying. So
Oh,
I'm glad,
absolutely.
yeah, I'm glad you touched on that because I think that's totally relatable.
Absolutely. And this is, I think a lot of this industry, you have to go find that information. I've always said this, that the industry is very purposely not transparent. It is very opaque. It does this for many a reason. Um, and so a lot of it is kind of trying to find that information, whether it's maybe on a writer podcast, maybe it's on an agent's blog on Substack or something. You know, you find these places to be able to have this information and make the best like possible choice, right, for you, whether it's querying, whether it's submitting, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why that was like one of the main reasons I wanted to do this series too, is I wanted
Mm-hmm.
there's this huge veil over it, like this big mystery and mystique, and I want to remove the veil so people
Yeah.
can see like these are human beings too. They're not some mythical creatures or
Yeah.
anything like that out of a
Or
book.
yeah, or it's treated sometimes very much like we talked in like the previous episode. I was in a sorority, Kappa Delta, and like, sometimes I'm like, y'all, this is not a secret society.
Yes.
Like why are we like this? And there's definitely times where kind of maybe, tweaking how you present certain information is like a needed. And I'm not saying like outright lying, but like how you are going to present that in case if it's bad news or something like that,
Yeah.
for example. That is sometimes needed, but like this like weird thing of like, we don't talk about our salaries. Like, fuck it. I like literally have a grid of like what my salaries were and what I asked for and what raises I got and what the reasoning was. And I always shared that with people because I was like, it's important. It's important to
Yeah.
know what I was making then or um what you could ask for now and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree. And I love that you're so transparent. I think that's incredibly rare. I don't think many people would be willing to be like, look, this is what I make. This is
No,
it.
it's something that I've really wanted to do in from the get-go in this industry is to have that transparency. Whether it was, I don't recommend this, y'all. I've written about this. I will talk your ear off, but I went to NYU Summer Publishing. I don't really recommend doing that if you want to do publishing. I recommend just trying to find an internship or just straight up going into a role.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and I talked about it, like I didn't get my job through SPI. And sure, I met some people, but like at the same time, the reason why I was able to stay in New York several months longer than anticipated is because I got scholarships. Or the other part of it was that my then fiance, now husband, he was a safety net while he was finishing college up in Missouri. So I really want to always share like how it's been possible for me on the financial side, because I don't ever want to like have this uh, you know, rosy colored view of like, oh my God, yeah, I can be like the struggling like artist, the like one who does it for this, and like you can also do it. And it's like, no, there's reality, and it's living in New York City
Yeah.
where publishing is set, and there's things that, and New York City rent is wild.
Oh
Uh,
my gosh, I can't even imagine.
oh my God, yeah. So I had two roommates. It was like three of us at one time. So
Wow. Yeah, I don't even want one roommate.
yeah, it was not great. It was not great.
So and we've talked about like the veil that there is on agenting and publishing. What is a piece of the publishing process that you're involved in that authors are often surprised to learn about?
Woo! That is like a really good question. I feel like it's basically kind of like everything. Like I think for an editor, so I'll kind of compare my experiences. So as an editor, you're the middleman, right? Like you're kind of having to manage different things, and you're the go-to for this author's like needs. You're the one who
Yeah.
has to go to publicity. They can talk to their publicist, but you also have to know, you have to be the one who like goes around and is like, hey, you know, salesperson for this, like, please read this novel so we can try to acquire it. For agenting, it's at least for me, it's being CC'd on as much as possible, and not just because like I'm being nosy or I want to keep my authors in line. No, like that's not a thing. It's so that I'm able to see what's happening, so that if there is a moment where things can get a little prickly, or if I'm noticing like, hey, that's not actually what you said, I can then step in and I have that information in hand, right?
Right.
So I think when you look at what an agent does, it's not just one thing, it's not just reading queries and then selling a book, but there's all these little nitty gritty things. I always tell my authors, I'm like, I'm here and you're going to pay me when we sell your books to be the big scary dog. Like, I am literally like the get behind me. Like, if anything happens, if you are upset, if something wild happens, if I am there for you, right?
Yeah.
I work for my clients. So that I think is like a big piece of the process. But in general, I'm also still like an editorial agent. So I'm still reviewing things. I'm brainstorming with authors. That's all part of the job.
Yeah, and I know, so that's actually interesting you say that, because I've noticed kind of a pattern with every agent that I've spoken with so far, is that it seems to me like you guys take on almost either a parental or big sibling role with your clients. Like you're like their protector and like their guide through the process.
Yeah, I mean, that is definitely kind of true. Like, I feel when I was an editor, I would be like, I'm your cheerleader, I'm your champion, I'm your advocate in house. I'm also like your um part-time therapist if you need to like talk, about something. But I think it's that from what your role as an editor is, like tenfold as an agent, because you are the first line of defense. You are their advocate, right? I always said, as an editor, when it comes time for a negotiation, I don't represent you, I represent the house, whereas an agent represents you completely.
Yeah.
I can be your in-house champion, I could be your advocate, and I could try to fight for things in-house, but at the end of the day, as an editor, you have one arm tied behind your back, because
Yep.
you're beholden to a publisher, you're beholden to the imprint and the bottom line and P&Ls and whatever. So it's really difficult to fully be that true advocate that you'd want. And there's so much other things because of like internal in-house like politics. But as that agent for my clients, like, yeah, I operate on several different roles. You know, can talk you down from the ledge if you need, like, can also like, okay, something happened, like, what happened? Okay, let me pull up this email, let me go talk to them, right? And that's when I have those like to the side conversations, not with the author CC'd, where I'm like, hey, what's happening?
I love that.
Explain.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like you come across as like a very like how do I word it? So like a shark in the industry, but you're sweet front facing.
I, you know, I think that was like one of the big hard parts about, again, like editorial, is that I couldn't acquire every author that I wanted. Whereas like now, people who query me, like, I make that decision on my own, and I'm not making that decision based on the market. Um, maybe it does influence my decision sometimes, but it's not just that. I'm in this for my like author's career, not just a
Right.
book. Right. So I want them to have as good of a career as I possibly can deliver in a volatile industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've mentioned that there's a lot that goes into the role. What's something that takes up a lot of time or energy in your job that rarely gets talked about?
Admin stuff like emailing people, that's kind of one of my favorite parts of the job. Much easier, very
Oh my
fast. I
gosh.
can I can handle it, right? Like it's great. I actually love admin work sometimes. Like I love it, right? It's so nice to
Yes,
just kind of
me
turn off your
too.
brain. But I think a lot of agents nowadays, one of our big things is that we've gotten to the point in the industry where the book needs to be like in a really good state. So something that takes up a lot of time can be those line edits and prepping the book for submission to make sure that, again, they have the best chance possible in getting acquired and bought. So that takes up a lot of time. That's a lot of energy. Um, I can always like knock out a dev edit way faster than I can a line edit. But I think also part of that is, and this probably seems obvious, but it is the reading of queries. Because you are, one of the people that can potentially, sign this author and get that book sold. And that is probably something that they've dreamed about, right? So I I personally take like query reading very seriously. Um, like I'm a little bit slow. I'm so sorry if you're listening to this and you have an outstanding like full request from me or something. I'm so sorry. That is something I'm working on. But it is, I'm wanting to read those first 20 pages. I'm wanting to read the query letter. I am wanting to see like, okay, is this something that, yes, I'll jump on and make a full request and then read the full. And I'm reading all of the full if I'm really liking it. Like I'm not just like, oh, like I liked it and I read the first 50 pages and I'm gonna sign you. Like I have to finish the whole book.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and I'm a slow reader, unfortunately. Although I got like a little Kindle and I can send my queries uh from Query Manager to the Kindle, and that is so helpful, to be honest, to like read, because now I can read like submissions on the train. um
That's so cool.
yeah, it's honestly, shout out to Query Manager. But that is a big part of the work, is that reading. um and you're also like you are managing people, because you're managing your clients, and you are, as I said, their first line of defense. When there's an issue, you're the one they come to. Whereas
Yeah.
like when you're an editor, you're the first one they come to, but then you also could be sent off, to, maybe this is a question for marketing, maybe this is a question for publicity or sales, and I'm going to get back to you, and like blah blah blah.
Yeah, so it's a lot more complex on the editor side, but still agenting is when you guys are incredibly busy all the time. So
Yeah,
yeah, so when an agent in general says they're busy, or even just when you say you're busy, what does that usually mean in practice?
it is usually probably a combination of my personal and my work life. I think for a lot of people, there's not as much of an understanding of the financial aspects of agenting. So personally for me, again, I'm very transparent. I like to be transparent. And I'm someone who has a financial privilege in that my husband works for a big company. He is a coder, and he does like engineering or whatever. Like I don't know. He's like software engineer. I think that's his title. He makes the computer go beep beep boop boop, and I kind of
Yeah,
understand it. I kind of don't. But
and that's
because
all
of
like,
that, yeah, because of that, we're able to comfortably live in New York City. Although we do live in Washington Heights, love it there. But at the same time, it's given me the ability, right, to not have a second part-time job or something, a day job. And that's a huge, huge privilege for anyone wanting to do agenting, because again, and for everyone who's like, oh, someone, an agent said that if I pay them this, like, no, money always flows to the author. Like, you are not, you do not need to pay me for me to edit you if you're my client. Like, it's a whole thing. Like, always research those people, right?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
like,
It's been a lot of
I'm,
those lately too.
yes, unfortunately. So, like, I don't get paid literally until my clients get paid. And that could be for a while, even when a book sells, right? A lot of the times, these publishers have gone from a half on signing, half on delivery and acceptance of final manuscript payment to splitting it into 4 payments. Um, so, coming back to the original part of the question as I go off the track a little bit,
Oh, you're totally fine.
yeah, I'm like needing to do things as well, like whether it's in my personal, like I'm needing to run errands, or I'm having to do something because maybe my husband's sick and he can't do it, or maybe we're busy with family stuff. But also on the agenting side, it could very well be that I'm trying to catch up on all those queries that I got. I'm trying to read through them and actually like give them an opportunity. Or, a fire has just come up that I wasn't expecting, and now I have to go figure out how we can turn it like off and make sure that my client is okay and happy. So there's so many different kind of moving parts about it. And other times, like it could just be that we're doing like internal agent things, or I'm doing kind of these extra, I don't want to say like extracurricular, like ancillary maybe is the better word, of like
Yeah.
agenting jobs, which is going in person and taking pitches, which is attending conventions, or even just like attending like industry conventions and conferences that are networking opportunities, but also opportunities to like hear from publishers of what's happening. So there's so many different kinds of busy. And for a lot of people, like I mentioned, you're navigating multiple things at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there an emotional or mental load in your work that people might not realize exist?
Absolutely. Again, I'll be completely honest. Like, I'm someone who has worked since I was like 15, right? Like, I've always had like a little job in college. I had like those 3 part-time jobs. I was working at the library, I was campus tour guide, I was um, also campus tour guide, and then I did one other job I'm not remembering right now. And, you know, I've always like worked and had like that like aspect of it, of like, okay, I'm getting paid, I'm getting that money. Um, Same thing for being an editor and working in-house, you're getting a salary. Most agencies are commission only, right? And that kind of financial aspect of it does take an impact when you are putting in so much time and energy into projects and going to sell them, right? That is my job. This is what I signed up for. But at the same time, I am still human. And like the investment that I'm putting into my clients isn't just because I'm like, oh yeah, like cool, I wanted to sign you up. And like it's no, like it's because I want to work with them. I want to sell their writing, and I'm taking all this time to do it. So it can be a lot, I think. But I think in general, having been in this industry almost a decade and seen so many different things and so many controversies and scandals and horrible things that publishing has like gone through,
Yeah.
you know, that also takes an impact. It really sucks. Like just a bit ago, we were hearing inklings of people being laid off or fired. That sucks. We're losing amazing editors and colleagues. That impacts us as well. Of the fact that like even in-house our colleagues aren't like stable, but not only that, like what then happens to all these books? An editor hopefully bought a book because they're passionate about it. Now, how does that impact my authors? there is a lot to it. I think for most people, it is more emotional than you might imagine. It's not just about the money. It is about the money because obviously, but it also is that time and the work. It is the work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what the people in the writing community need to understand more than anything. Like, you guys aren't in this solely for the money. Like, you're in this because you care. You're in this because you actually care about not just what the person wrote, like their book and the story, but the person behind it just as much.
Yeah, absolutely. Like again, like when I offer to sign a client, I always want to talk to them first. And, I'm making that offer as well, but I'm wanting them to take time to make a decision because it is a big decision. Um, no matter if you're making it one time or if you're having to do it another time because your agent no longer is the right relationship for you and you're going to go query again. Um, but that's why I like to talk to people. I like to make sure that we vibe, like literally, like, do we, get along? Do you understand how I work? How do you work? Like having that conversation, that communication is highly, highly important to me. Um, and like I mentioned earlier, as an editor, you maybe only work on a couple books. You used to be back in the day, back in the golden age, I guess. Like you could have a career where you're getting edited by this one person for like ever, but that's not how it is nowadays. And so
Oh, yeah, I
being able,
remember.
yeah. And so like now, like that's one of my things, right? Is that like I want to be with my authors more than one book. I want to see them grow as creators. I want to see what fun stuff they come up with. They surprise me so much of the time. So there is a lot um, that comes with it. Yeah, and they're also people, like right, like
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Shelly, for giving me your unique perspective here. This is it for episode 2. Is there any final thought or closing note you want to leave listeners with?
I think you know, which is basically like the reason why you're doing this podcast. I think it becomes very easy to think of us agents as not people.
Yeah.
Um, when honestly, the hardest person, like I'm the worst person to myself. Um, if I have to tell my clients that like I'm gonna be late or behind or delayed, like I'm the one beating myself up for it. My clients are super, super understanding, right? But that's the human part of it, of, how much kind of pressure we also put on ourselves in this work. And so, it could be easy to be like, well, she's been in the industry for a while and she like does this and that and she knows this person and this person, like blah blah blah, like I'm not gonna hurt your feelings. Like we're all people.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like this is a job, this is our career, um but we're in it for a particular reason, and we're not here to be vindictive to anyone. But having that kind of patience and understanding of what we do. And I've always kind of said to people, like, I am really sorry, like how delayed I am in like reading queries, but at the same time, my clients who are signed are the priority. And I
Yeah.
want that for any prospective client to understand. Like, you will be the priority um, when I sign you, not the people trying to sign with me. So we're human. We also, even though we have our own flexible work schedules and stuff like that, we work from home mostly, like, we also have lives. Like if you see me on Threads and I'm chatting and I'm yapping, where I just said that I went to go see 28 years later the Bone Temple or like another movie, um, like it's because I needed the downtime. It's because I
Yeah.
needed a popcorn and a Coke icy, as I've mentioned.
You should try a
So,
lime Coke icy. It's so good.
oh, that's wild. But yeah, so I think like I'm blabbering.
No,
But
you're
that's,
fine.
I'm really glad that you're doing this, and hopefully there's so many different perspectives and people actually get more of that clearer picture. So
Yeah,
thank you.
I'm glad to be able to do it. I'm honored that so many of you have trusted me with, the vulnerable side of, your personal aspect of your life. That's really huge to me. It means a lot to me because the main reason I wanted to do this is because I don't feel that agents are treated often fairly by the people that are trying to be their client, and the
Yeah.
aspiring authors and stuff. So I want to humanize the role so you guys have the opportunity to be able to speak freely more often rather than having to be silenced as you so often are, or having to constantly watch
Yeah.
everything you say online.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I know in episode 1 you said you're open to answering questions in the comments. Is that the same for this episode too?
Absolutely. Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Shelly, for taking the time to answer these deeper questions. Until
Yes. Thank
then,
you.
Your fairy tales don't fit my scars. I don't need a crown to touch the stars. I'll kiss the dark, I'll bless the pain. My kind don't die, we just change our name.
Vicky Weber is back for episode 2 in this mini series where we show the writing community and publishing industry behind the veil of the agent role to bring humanity into it. Thank you again for being part of this, Vicky.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. What's a decision you make regularly that looks simple from the outside, but is actually very complex?
Taking on an author or a project, hands down, because there's a lot of discourse and there's a lot of opinions, there's a lot of conversations around this, but what it comes down to is it's just not simple. So when I'm evaluating a project and whether or not I want to sign this author and their manuscript, the first thing I'm looking for is quality. Does it fit what I represent? Is it at a place editorially where we're close to getting on submission? And do I actually have a vision for how to improve it and how to sell it well and how to make things happen for this author beyond just the book? If those things are in place, then the next piece I'm looking at is the strategy, because as an agent, with very few exceptions, I can only send one project at a time to an editor, period, not per author.
Right.
So, what that means is if you have this incredible YA horror that is, high concept and commercial and it's all the really, really great things, and I'm looking for more YA horror, but the elements that make your book really great, like the voice, the style of the prose, the comps, the themes, all of those things, if they would be a match for the same editors for a project I already have on submission, if I signed that author or that project, I don't have anywhere to send it. And in the past, that was less of an issue, but now wait times are longer than ever before. My average right now is like 8 months before I hear back from an editor.
Wow.
There are times that it's faster. I've sold projects in just a few weeks, but I've also sold projects after they've been on submission for 2 years. So it's not exactly fair to sign an author and then say, yeah, I don't have anywhere to send this for an undetermined amount of time. That's not good for the author, and it's not good for me who only makes money on commission. So that's an instance where I might say, I love this writer, I love this idea, but I can't take this on because it would be doing this author a disservice. And so that's an instance where an agent might just say no, or might say no, but I would love to see other projects from you in the future, because the issue wasn't the author and the writing, it was that particular book and the set of circumstances around it. And that is why my number one advice for querying writers is write more books. don't just try to get one book agented and rewrite your query letter 100 million times. Write more books because you'll learn more with each book that you write, but you'll also open up doors and opportunities with every book you write, because not every book is going to be the book that gets you an agent. And not every book that gets you an agent is the first one to sell. In fact, it's actually really incredibly low, that would be the case. So yeah, I think that's the main one, is just there's so many moving pieces. It's literally like a moving puzzle. And so to give yourself the best chance of fitting in to an agent's list is to write more than one book.
Absolutely. No, I agree completely because when I was 16, I wrote my first novel and I thought, this is it, the first draft, that's it. I'm now an amazing author. I am incredible. And I was even arguing with agents like, why will you not represent me? I was 16, mind you. Different person now. But yeah, no, I agree completely. Writing the other books have got me like I've learned so much about myself as a writer, about the craft. So I agree completely there. What's something that you wish authors or people in the writing community, if they could sit within with you for a day, that just to understand you better?
Ooh, like just something that I wish they knew, or something that you think they should witness about my job.
Some something they should witness. They could sit
Ooh.
in on for a day, just so you could get them to understand it better. They could sit and watch for a day.
I think writers and authors, creators, all of the people, I think that they would all learn a whole lot by sitting in Query Manager and making decisions for 24 hours. I think that that would answer a lot of questions and provide a lot of context. I think that they would be able to see, like, oh, yeah, no, everybody's comping Mexican Gothic. I can see why now that's a red flag for agents, because if everybody does it, then it's like, oh, another one of these. And I purely contribute my success with getting my second agent to the things that I learned as an agent. I got better at pitching myself. I had a stronger idea of what stands out, how to make myself stand out. I had a better handle on strategy. I was also a better writer. And so my first time in the query trenches, I got a whole lot of nothing. I got a lot of just non-responses. I got a ton of passes with zero feedback. It was months and months and months of frustration. And then the second time around, it was the opposite. I signed with an agent, I think within a week and a half of starting to query. But I front loaded everything. I sat down and I wrote query packages for my entire portfolio. Well, the portfolio pieces that were submission ready. My work
Yeah,
in progress is they stayed in a drawer. Uh,
walked away.
there's no one wants to see those. So I made query packages for every single one of those things, and then I built my agent list and I said, great, which project is my best chance at getting my foot in the door with this particular agent? And I didn't just look at what genre. Oh, they do horror, here's this. Oh, they do picture books, here's a picture book. No, I looked at what specifically. If they
Yeah.
said, I'm looking for the next Eyes That Kiss in the Corners, that is incredibly literary, character driven, rooted in, culture and self-esteem. I looked at, okay, if that's what they want, what is the closest thing that I've got here? And I think that that's part of what made me stand out, was reading between the lines and looking at the nuance. And I think most authors would get that if they sat in Query Manager for 24 hours.
Yeah, I think excuse me. I think a lot of us sit in Query Tracker anyway for hours, just staring at like the queries, like when am I gonna get an answer? And then checking for maybe piles. But yeah, seeing it from that perspective, I think it would give a lot of insight, open people's eyes, and maybe make them second guess before they decide to get either judgmental or critical of an agent taking and how much time they take to respond.
Yeah, and Adria Getz is a literary agent, and one of her analogies was whenever somebody asks her, "What is it like being an agent?" She's like, "Okay, imagine you're somebody who loves to read, and you have this amazing problem. You are locked in a bookstore with 5,000 books, and you're locked in this bookstore for a year, but you are only allowed to buy three of these books. So, how are you going to decide which three you are going to buy?" And I always like that analogy because I'm like, okay, so that doesn't actually mean that other books in the pile aren't worth buying necessarily. And I think that that puts a very specific light on the level of volume we're looking at, and we're experiencing on our end, and exactly why it's so tough to get an agent nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely. What part of agenting, though, happens entirely behind the scenes, but shapes the outcome in big ways?
The relationship building, I think, with
Mhm.
editors and publishing houses, because again, what I talked about with that nuance for querying, that's literally my whole job on the agenting side. My job isn't just to prep a package and then send it to publishers. I need to be looking at who am I sending it to? Why am I sending it to them? Why do I think that they would be a good fit for this project and for this author? Not just conceptually, but editorially. Like, are these two going to get along? So it's not just a sales job, it's a matchmaking job. And in order to do the matchmaking piece, I need to really have a deep understanding of each editor, what they're like, what they're actually looking for beyond the genre, what projects they've worked on in the past. And so keeping up on that and like where the industry is going, it's a lot of silent work. It's a lot of things that will never be public facing, except when those deals and connections start coming through. But yeah, it's not just as simple as send it out and hope for a yes.
So, what's a piece of the publishing process that you're involved in that authors are often surprised to learn about?
So, another agent, I'm blanking on her name right now, but she runs Ash Literary. She it has a pretty big following on TikTok. One of her videos went semi-viral because um, someone asked, why wouldn't an agent just take on a project if the author already had a deal in hand? Because, then your job is basically done for you. The book is sold. And she was like, that is a very small part of the agenting job. And most authors don't have any reason to know that, but it's true. We're basically like project managers kind of on the back end. We're tracking things like, okay, the contract says this was the publication date. Are we on track to meet that publication date? Has anybody breached contract in any way? Great. Did they actually give consultation to the author on the cover when they said they would? No, they didn't. Great. Who do I need to call? And Mama Bear. Um, so I'm figuring out like the things that were promised, are those the things that are actually happening in the production process? And if they're not, I'm stepping in to get them to happen. Um, and so there's a lot that goes into that. Like publication dates get moved all the time. People come and go. Like there's layoffs. And so if there's a layoff, okay, who's our point person now for this? Or who's taking over this project? And if they don't communicate that to the author, that's for me to make some calls and emails to figure out. And then once the book is published, we're doing the same thing with the royalties. Um, do the royalty statements actually match up? Because publishers do make mistakes. So we have to look at, okay, is this actually what sold? Are these numbers actually right? Oh, wait, you forgot the escalator here. You forgot this percentage, or we were supposed to get a bonus for XYZ. Where is that? And then we're watching for reversions. So when the book goes out of print, we need to request that the rights are reverted back to the author. Or sometimes it's not when it's out of print, sometimes it's after a certain amount of years. So if the contract says this contract is for 5 years. I need to know in 5 years that we're requesting a reversion letter and getting the right paperwork so that we can do something else with that project. And so the laundry list goes on, but it is a lot of minute, fine details that most authors don't have any reason to think about unless they've been in the process themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of things you were saying I didn't even know at all. Um, so I'm learning a lot myself today here too. What's a misconception about agenting though that comes from not seeing the full picture rather than bad intent?
Um, I think there's a lot of writers that just assume that agents are A, rolling in money. We ain't. Ain't nobody in publishing rolling in money except I don't know, maybe the head honchos or something. I don't know. I don't even know. Um, and the second is uh that a lot of authors feel like we're judging their worth when we're giving a response to their project. And I think that that explains a lot of why we get as many emotional reactions as we do on
Yeah.
social media, in emails, in comments, because with anything else, a polite no thank you is not personal in any way. But writing is innately personal. Even if it's a fictional story, it's hard not to take that as a response on how worthwhile you are. And so I think that's the biggest misconception is that like agents are saying no to you or agents are saying no because it's a horrible project or whatever it is. 9 times out of 10, it's just that it's not ready. So my analogy for that is if you imagine that an agent is a is like a real estate agent with really strong background in interior design. That means if you're trying to sell your house, I can come in and say, "Great, let's repaint this wall and let's stage this room to be XYZ. Let's improve the flow by moving this over here." The most we're doing is we're blowing out a wall. Like that's the most we're doing. But if you come to me and say, "Hey, can you sell my house?" but you've built the kitchen on the roof, I can't sell that. And I'm not a contractor. I can't move your kitchen to where a kitchen should be and help you rebuild the whole house. I can't do anything if you haven't built a roof. I can't do anything if you insist that it's a single family home when it's actually a studio apartment. Um, and so I think thinking about it from that perspective of like your house just isn't ready yet. That doesn't mean it won't be. That doesn't mean you can't have your creative stamp, but it needs to have a solid foundation or it's literally dangerous. And like it needs to be stable and function. And
Yeah,
so I do think if you start thinking about it that way, most people just start querying too early. Um, and that's not any indication of what you'll be able to accomplish or what you can do. You just have to keep learning and growing.
absolutely. That's very well said. I love that analogy too. Because then I think about it like when your house has to be strong enough to be able to withstand the storm that is the publishing process.
Exactly, because editors will edit, but again, we're not talking about tearing down and reframing. Like we're not talking about that level of editing, right? So, um, I think it's a good way to visualize what you're creating.
Yeah.
And I also think that that visual has helped me when I'm planning a new work in progress because then I start with the framework of what do I want this to be? What do I want the character's journey to be? And then I can start putting all of the other puzzle pieces in place.
Yeah. No, absolutely. What's something about your job though that takes up a lot of your time or energy but rarely gets talked about.
Email. My whole job is email.
That was so quick.
Email, just all the emails. Literally, when somebody's like, describe your job poorly, and I'm like, answering emails. That is my job. My whole job. Um,
I love that.
so many emails.
What's like the most emails you've gotten in a single day?
I don't even know because at this point, at any given time, I have like, okay, so I'm a person, this is really hard for me. I'm a person that when I open an email, like I always read an email when it comes in, and if it's something quick and I can answer, I answer it. If it's something that needs more time and attention, I mark it as unread to circle back to later because it needs more time, energy, or, I have to do something. Um, at any given time, I have a minimum of like 300 unread emails. I've yet to get under that number. Every time I'm like, woo, just knocked out 20, there's 20 more. Um, yeah.
That's a lot. I could not. I get overwhelmed if I have 10. I'm like, no, thank you. What's something about your day-to-day work, though, aside from emails, that most authors never see or realize exists?
Hmm. Probably all the like agent communities. Um, in the past, a lot of agents were much more independent and relied on just themselves or the infrastructure within their agency. But especially agents who've started in the last like 4 or 5-ish years, give or take, a lot more of them have been spending time sharing information and supporting one another because it is so hard to find information on editors and who's still at this imprint. Why did this person leave? Where did they land? It's practically a full-time job in itself to keep up on all of that. And so more agents have been banding together. And I think that's a really positive thing. But that also means that the industry's not as big as you think it is. So whenever there's a scandal online or somebody who is like full-blown harassing agents or things like that, um, that may be a point of discussion, um, that not all authors realize. I will say that it's extreme. If somebody just says, something simple or, that's not a topic of conversation. But I had one author who emailed me very aggressive cursing threats and then
What?
did it publicly on social media.
Oh my
And
gosh.
come to find out, I was not the only agent that they had done that to. So those agents started coming forward, and that person was somebody I met at a conference. So they then got
Oh my
banned from that
gosh.
conference. That conference owner knew other conferences that this person had attended, and so they got banned from those as well. And so those are the types of things that can happen because nobody wants a liability. Nobody wants to, you know, put that much work into somebody who isn't going to treat them with respect because at the end of the day, I have a lot of clients I've never made any money on. And there's going to be a lot of authors that I don't make money on ever, or it's years before I do. And so I'm not going to do that if I can't have some basic human decency respect.
Yeah, that's like that's bare minimum. That's kind of one of the reasons I'm doing this too, is I want to help prevent things like that for agents so that, or at least help make it happen less and less until it eventually does fizzle out. So when you, as an agent, say you're busy, I know that could mean like a million different things, especially with emails and everything we've talked about. But what does that usually mean for you in practice when you tell someone I'm busy right now?
Well, for me, because I wear so many hats, it means a lot of things. But if we're talking agent specific, we're talking about things like prepping things to go on submission, which involves like rewriting pitches, doing comp research, edit letters, and back and forth with clients on that, building a submission list of, those perfect editors for this author and this project, and then double checking and making sure, do I already have something out with this person? Do I not? Um, if I'm building a submission list and I'm like, oof, I don't have as many people as I was thinking. I know this imprint would be a good fit, but I'm not sure who on this team to send it to. I'm going to go set up a meeting with these people and learn more information so that I can make that really good choice. So there's a lot of stuff like that. Then there's also a lot of tracking the publication process, like I mentioned a little bit earlier. And then there's also things like at my agency, we maintain a database of what editors are where, what their wish lists are, what their email is, so we're not hunting it down and redoing the research every time. So I'm consistently updating that. Right now, all of these are unannounced, so I can't give more details than this, but I am working on 6 contracts,
Oh, wow.
and I have 2 offers that came through this week on 2 different projects.
Well, congrats
So
on that.
thank you. Yeah, so I'm doing a lot of paperwork and contracts and then talking with those authors about what's important to you, what's not important to you. These are the things I would like to push on. What are the things that you want to push on? How do you feel about XYZ? Um, and then I'm also talking with my authors about what is your work in progress? What do you need help? How can I support you with that? I also recently took on subrights for CMA, so I'm pitching audio separately as well as educational licensing. I pitch our Illustrator lookbook to the designers and art directors at publishing houses. Um, so lots of hats, and that's just the agenting side.
Well, what's an emotional or mental load in your work that people might not realize even exists that we haven't talked about already?
Ooh, probably just the amount of thought that goes into every email response. Because as an agent, I'm a fiduciary for my client. So I need to maintain a relationship with editors, which means I need to, have a good relationship with them, support them, communicate with them, and give them enough information while not doing my author a disservice. Because sometimes if you just lay out numbers, that may or may not get your author the best deal or the best terms or the best publisher. And so I can't lie. I have to be truthful. I have to be transparent. I have to be honest. But I also have to be careful about how much do I reveal? How much do I hold back unless they ask? And if they do ask, how do I answer that question in a way that's positive and not negative? Um, so there is a little bit of like psychology and creative thinking that goes in because again, I need to be truthful in order to maintain these relationships all around. Um, so there's a very careful balancing act between that and what I say, but also how I say it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that can honestly be a lot on any person too, to try to balance all that and make sure you do it in a very specific way, because one tiny little misstep could, create a lot of issues. So what's
Yeah.
something you do for your authors that doesn't show up anywhere publicly but matters a lot to you?
Oh. Well, my authors, I always tell them, first of all, I tell them I apologize that I'm a weirdo. So if they sign with me, they know firsthand that I'm a weirdo, I'm a goofball. They don't need to be embarrassed with saying or asking whatever jumps into their mind. Um, I really like to emphasize with them that I am not going to play games. I'm going to tell them what I recommend. I'm going to tell them what suggestions I have for the manuscript. I'm not going to hold back. I'm always going to be kind in doing that because there's no reason to not do that.
Right.
Um, but I'm going to be transparent about what issues we might face or, what my honest thoughts are because I want them to do the same with me. And I specifically tell them if you have a concern, if you have a problem, if you need something, I can't read your mind. I want you to feel comfortable coming to me. I want you to feel comfortable pushing back, kindly, of course. Um, but there's 100 right ways to solve a problem. There's 100 right ways to fix an issue in a manuscript in a way that stays in line with that author's vision. But we can't get to it if we're not being honest with one another. And so, um, that is just really important to me because at the end of the day, I don't care if my authors actually take my advice word for word, but I want them to at least openly and honestly consider it because then if they're like, nope, don't like that, they know why they like it or don't like it. And that reaffirms, okay, well, if this is what Vicky's suggesting and this solution doesn't work, what's a different way I can solve this? Or, ooh, you know what? I wanted this character to be XYZ and it's clear now that that's not coming through. So how do I make it come through because that will solve this? Um, that's what I want in an author, and that's what I hope an author that signs with me wants in me as well. But yeah, I think that just that transparency, that honesty, that candidness, I do have authors be very goofy with me back, and I do not mind that one bit. And I think it's really fun. One of my authors the other day, I said, if you're all right with this, I'm going to send this off. And she texted in all caps, fly, my pretty.
I love
And that's
that.
just how we talk to each other. And that is absolutely a-okay with me because I knew what she meant. The communication was there. Um, yeah.
That's hilarious. I have a writer friend who I told that when I get an agent because she's also my dev editor and is a saint and amazing. I told her that when I get an agent, I owe her my left arm. She's like, "Well, you already promised me your right, so I guess you're going to be armless." I said, "Yes, you can just type for me. I'll speak."
Yep. I can't tell you how many times one of my authors has like texted or emailed and said, "Hey Vicky, TMI," and then they told me something like really personal. And that's okay because it was pertinent to know like why they weren't answering emails right away or like why there would be a delay in something. But they could have just said, you know, "Hey, I'm going to be out of office for a couple of days," but they felt comfortable enough with me to say more details and know that I would keep that confidential. And I just think that that speaks to the level of relationship I would like to have with my authors, even if it doesn't start that way. Um, I would like it to grow to a place where they just aren't afraid of me. I don't want them to be afraid of me. I'm very unterrifying.
Yeah, I've been, that's actually funny because a lot of the agents I've spoken with, one of the things that I've noticed as a theme is that you guys tend to have either paternal or sibling role with your clients.
Yeah,
It's
mine's
very
probably
like,
a little bit of a mix, depending on the author, because I
yeah,
also do cater the relationships I have with each of my authors to their strengths and their preferred communication styles. That bleeds over from my teaching days because it's not a one size fits all.
no,
So there are some writers that I text with, and then there's other writers that I never text with. It just depends on what works best for that relationship and that client. But no matter what, when it comes to negotiating a contract, dealing with editors, mama bear mode, 100% for every single one of my authors. I'm feral for them.
We love feral queens over here. Thank you so much, Vicky. This is going to be it for episode 2. Is there any final thought or closing note you would like to leave listeners with for this episode?
I think just keep in mind that at the end of the day, if you're trying to get agented, you're looking for that mama bear. You're looking for somebody who is just as excited, if not more excited, about your work than you are. And that takes time, it takes persistence, and it likely will take writing more than one book, and that's okay. So give yourself some grace and don't assume that the responses that you are getting have anything to do with your level of potential or how successful you are going to be, because there's lots of definitions of success, and the only way that you will never achieve your dreams is if you give up now. So keep going.
Yep. You can't get something that you never started in the first place.
100%.
So I know in episode 1 you said you were open to answering questions in the comments. Are you still open to doing that for this one?
Of course.
Perfect.
Fuck being a princess, I'd rather be a witch. Light my heart like a servant bitch. You got pearls, I got smoke. You say pray, I say provoke.
Josh Foreman is back for episode 2 in the mini series where we show the writing community and publishing industry behind the veil of the agent role to bring humanity into it. Thank you again, Josh, for being part of this.
Of course. Happy to be here.
So what is a decision, Josh, that you make regularly that looks simple from the outside, but is actually very complex?
Sure, I think there are honestly a lot, but I think a big one is honestly the queries. It's hard to say no on books. I think a lot of authors may have the perception that we go through really quickly and it's just an easy no for us. But honestly, I hate sending rejections. I wish I could sign every author who submits to me. But I can. I just don't have the time. I'm so busy. But I think that, it's tough, especially when, maybe there's a couple books that are really maybe similar to each other and I love them equally. It's really hard to make that choice and say no. And even it's also just as hard sometimes to say yes because, I'm so busy. I have so much going on, and every author I bring on adds to my plate, adds to my workload, and so I think it can be difficult sometimes to make those decisions in the query manager and tell people no and tell people yes and make those calls, but you still have to do it. Regardless of timelines, regardless of whatever, I want to make sure that the people who submit to me, have those responses, know what's happening, but it's sometimes really challenging to, say no when I know how much this means to these authors.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a common thing that I've heard too.
Mm-hmm.
So what part of agenting happens entirely behind the scenes but shapes outcomes for you or your clients in big ways?
I think it all comes down to the relationships that agents build with editors and other agents. You know, I'm always meeting with editors for my clients. I'm always meeting with editors just to talk, just to whatever. And we're emailing all the time. We're, you know, forming relationships. At every imprint, well, not every imprint, but the imprints I submit to regularly, I have a person. Like that's who I like to go to. That's who I like to submit to. And I think that, to some extent, we all have that. Every agent has that. We have our people that we like to go to because we know when we submit to them, they're going to give this book, our project, our submission, whatever, like they're going to give it a fair shake. They're going to take it seriously. And if it does go to the board because they know us, they're going to fight for it. And they're going to be, they're going to try to work with us because they like us. They want to know us, they want to work with us. And so I think that that's something that maybe gets a little bit not slept on, but just kind of not really talked about is the relationship building in this industry is so important. And if you don't have it, it's really hard to be successful.
Yeah, I think the common misconception in the writing community is that the relationship building stops at the client agent part, and it doesn't. Because what I even learned throughout all this is that the client or the author has to also establish that relationship with the editor that they sign with.
100%. No, that's hugely important. Honestly, a lot of times, even before a publisher will make an offer, they'll want to talk with the author to make sure that, visions line up, to make sure that they mesh, personality wise, to make sure it's somebody they can even work with. So the relationship building in this industry is really, really important. And it's something I try to work at. So like if I see something come up on Publishers Marketplace or something where somebody gets a promotion or moved or something, I try to reach out and be like, hey, like congrats, let's do a call sometime. I'd love to hear about your wish list, things like that. And you always just got to be reaching out, talking to people, meeting the people, doing the things. All that stuff is really, really important.
I couldn't agree more. So when an agent says they're busy, what does that usually mean in practice, at least for you?
When I'm busy, it means I'm juggling about 100,000 things. It feels like some days. So like right now, I have an ongoing editorial project for one of my authors. I'm reading about 14 manuscripts. It feels like, it might actually be about 14 manuscripts. Not feels like. I think it's about 14 manuscripts. Um, I have a day job that I work at almost every day. I'm, like I mentioned before, reaching out to editors. I'm sending nudges. I'm sending new submissions. I'm doing research on editors that we can submit to in the future. Because while I do have the people I like, I do want to be expanding that network. I do want to be submitting to new people always, because you never know who's going to buy a book. And you never know who is going to fall, really click with you and maybe buy a bunch of books from you. So
Yeah,
you always want to be meeting new people. You always want to be doing those things. And then also it's, I'm learning, I'm reading, I'm always getting better, with this stuff, I think.
yeah, absolutely. It's an ongoing process of growth, even as a
For
person.
sure. But yeah, I would say that, when I'm busy, it's not necessarily that I'm busy with one big thing. It's more that there are like 100 little things that are all kind of pulling me in different directions. And that's what's going on versus I have this one really big project I'm working on and I'm super busy with this. And so everything needs to get set aside. It's more, I'm kind of trying to juggle everything at once and just kind of check the tasks off the list.
Yeah, like your plate's full and you can't take anything else on it.
Hmm.
What's something you do for your authors that doesn't show up anywhere publicly, but matters a lot to you and your clients?
I think something that I do really well, my clients I know have said that they really appreciate this, is the transparency that I give them. Not every agent gives sublists to their clients, and not every agent keeps them up to date on, passes, how it's going. Are we going to acquisitions? Are we doing these things? And even on the thought process behind like who we're submitting to and why. I talk with my clients, some of them almost every day, if not weekly for sure. And they know that they're always welcome to come ask questions like, why did we submit to this person? Or how's it going with this person? Or what's going on at this imprint? And and I'm more than happy to give them that information, because the last thing any of us need is, someone crashing out, someone wondering what's going on, someone being like, hey, like, I don't understand the decisions we're making here, and so I think that something I do really well is I try to be really transparent with everything that's happening. And, it sucks sometimes because you have to tell them, I tell my clients when it is a no, and that sucks. Nobody wants to be told no.
Yeah.
A lot of authors have the perception, I think, sometimes that when you land an agent, that means you have a deal in the bag, and that's not the truth. It takes a lot of work, even after you have that agent, to land that deal. And all of that shows up in small things like editor guides, pitch letters, elevator pitches. All these little things kind of add up to make a deal come together. And then it also has to, gets into like that same stuff we were talking about before with the relationship building and all that stuff. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of work, both on my part and my author's part, to make those things happen. Um, and so I think that the best thing I can do to help facilitate that is be as transparent as possible with them so that they don't have more things to worry about. Um, and just keep it real. That's what we do. We just keep it real. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That gives such an important window into the reality of the job. Thank you so much, Josh, for giving your
Of
unique
course.
perspective here. That is the end of episode 2. is there any final thought or closing note you'd like to leave listeners with for this episode?
Um, I'm not sure, honestly. I don't think so. I think just keep working at it. It'll happen. Keep doing the things,
Yep.
It all comes together when it's supposed to.
Some progress, even if it's slow progress, is better than none at all.
100%. I 1,000% agree with that.
So are you open to answering questions in the comments of this episode as well?
Always. Yeah, no, I love answering questions. So
Perfect.
Being a princess, I'd rather be a witch. Dance in the ashes, stitch by stitch. You preach pure, I preach sin. I rise wild from my own sin.
Renee Runge is back for episode 2 in this mini-series where we show the writing community and publishing industry behind the veil of the agent role to bring humanity into it. Thank you again, Renee, for being a part of this.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Now, Renee, what's something you wish authors could sit in on for a day just to understand it better?
Honestly, I really wish that authors could have access to see all of the different inboxes that you have to have as an agent, just to see how many emails and queries we get per day, alongside the social media messages or emails that somehow end up in my personal inbox, which is not listed anywhere. So I don't even know how people find that one. um, I think I think that authors would be really surprised just to see the sheer volume of um, messages that people expect responses to. And I would really want to emphasize to authors that I promise I'm not ignoring you when you ask for your query updates. I just have a million other things to get to for my current clients who are always going to take priority.
Yeah, absolutely.
Once you're my client, you get my full and immediate attention. But until then, you're going to get an answer when you get an answer. And we'll all just have to be happy with that timeline.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think it's really highly underestimated how much you guys have to deal with on a daily basis and how many emails you get that you are expected to respond to. And it's a lot. You're still a person. You're one person.
Especially when my day job is emails also.
Oh my gosh. Yeah,
Sometimes I feel
absolutely.
like I'm just flipping between inboxes all day.
That's insane. That's a lot. What's an emotional or mental load in your work that people don't realize exist?
I'm gonna feel like kind of a baby when I say this, but it's been really crushing for me most recently when um, I know that I'm the first person to offer on someone's projects. And we have a really great conversation on call. I feel like we've really connected over our personalities and the editorial vision for the project. And then, they have their 2-week period where they can and should definitely think about the decision. And in that process, they let other agents know that they've received an offer, which is totally, totally fair.
Right.
I think it's just been really hard recently to know that because I have kicked it off by extending the offer, and then you see other agents start jumping on the bandwagon that you started. um, it gets pretty anxiety inducing just knowing how much I really loved a project so much, and you almost want to become kind of possessive over it. Uh, but even more so, it's been a challenge for me when all of that happens and the author decides to go with one of those other agents instead of
Mhm.
your offer. I have cried several times recently over losing out on projects to other people because it takes a lot of time and effort to prepare notes and revision recommendations for those calls, and you're thinking about it for the next 2 weeks, and then the decision comes and it's not you, and it's just kind of crushing.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, I can imagine. I've actually been thinking a lot about that lately too, just because of my own personal progress. So I've always wondered how agents deal with that part of it. Like when, they put on an offer and then that author goes and lets other agents know, and then there's other offers and how that they both ends feel and how that works.
Yeah, and
So,
at the end of the day, I want every author to be able to have that ability to choose the person that they feel is ultimately going to be their best advocate over the course of their career,
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
we aim for career partnerships. I mean, most of us do. And it just sucks to know that that's not you.
Right. I know. So then what is a piece of the publishing process you're involved in aside from that aspect that authors are often surprised to learn about or surprised to learn that you're a part of?
I think people have generally seemed um, pretty surprised to learn that the work of an agent continues after the sale is made to a publisher. Your agent is typically CC'd in all communications to and from your publisher.
Oh, wow.
So I get to be a fly on the wall for consult on things like mock covers, final titles, marketing plans, and any other parts of the process. And it's important for the agent to be there as part of those communications to make sure that all the elements of the contract that you sign upon acquisition are carried out fully, and to resolve any potential conflicts that might arise between the author and their editor, because we really are the middleman, and that is the role that we find ourselves in once we've gone through the long, arduous process of submissions and all of that waiting period.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, that gives such an important window into the reality of the job, Renee. So thank you so much for giving your unique perspective there. Is there any final thought or closing note that you would like to leave listeners with for this episode?
No, I don't think so.
Perfect. Well, are you still open to answering questions in the comments if you have time?
Yeah, of course.
Who told you soft was holy? You did. Who said quiet wins? You did. Who built thrones for men alone? You did. Who burns us when we grin? You did.
And that is all for episode 2 of The Agent Unveiled. So I want to thank every single agent that has participated. Their unique perspectives were able to give such an important window into the reality of the job. I want to thank them for taking the time to answer these deeper questions. In 2 weeks, we will have our final one-on-one episode where we dive even deeper into the nuances of the industry with episode 3.
Make the heavens glitch. You want calm, I want stone. I crack bones just to be reborn.
That's all for today. Thank you again for stepping into the den with me. And listeners, don't forget, I want to hear from you. So drop a comment or hit my DMs with conversation topics you want to hear or even be a part of. Your voice is valuable too. Let's work together to bring humanity into conversations and talk about what it means to build something honest in a tough world. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the many conversations I can't wait to have with you. You can subscribe for free or support the show even further with a paid subscription that gives you immediate access to exclusive content and special extras. As always, whether you've already clawed your way out of the darkness in your life or are still trapped inside, I'm here. Through Lioness Ink and Insight, I'll sit with you and paint a star of light in it to keep you company. You're not alone anymore. You're a member of my pride now. And I'll be the loud, fierce centennial holding a quiet space of healing for you, an escape from the darkness as you find your way to the light. Thank you for tuning in and joining me in the Pride Lands of Lioness Ink and Insight. Until next time, stay real, stay weird, stay fierce.
You play safe, I bloom south like a